Hey, how's it going? We're going to finish up some running back ranks in this video. I've been trying to make an individual video on every player, and it's just not cutting it. I could have gotten them out, but I was doing two a days, you know. And then one had to be redone because I had the wrong combine stats in there, and I've just gotten behind a little bit. I want to speed up and get us ready to take on some other subjects, and I've got to write some articles, man. So I'm just doing a quick kind of roundhouse of the last few of the running back ranks live on stream on Monday, whenever Monday was for you. It was, I don't even know when it was for me. I've been in this office a long time today, but I finalized my wide receiver ranks. Not that there isn't more to say or isn't more to look at, and I'll keep looking at it, but I just kind of want to get my pre-draft ranks done, and that's where I'm at with running back right now. But to do that, I've got to round out the last few profiles I really want to get to and look at in the way I've been doing in these rookie videos. So this is just kind of a clean house video. Let's do some quick takes on the running backs I have left to look at on the YouTubes. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to run through some names, explain some of my early thoughts on these players, and yeah, we're gonna move on. So I'm pretty sure I've done rookie profiles all the way up to my second tier here, but moving into the third tier, we've got a group of guys that all look very different in different ways, obviously, but they're a little more, I want to know where their draft capital is going to be, and I want to know where their landing spot is to really know what to make of them. And so they make up this similar tier here of guys I'm considering kind of in the second round, depending on what happens in the draft. Now, Jamar Jefferson is actually someone who was getting a lot more buzz earlier in this process on the old Twitters. He is interesting. Is one of the few running backs who's coming out at a reasonably average age or younger age with almost not too many touches, like a lot of the players in this class look like. Has a decent signal that he was playing more of a three-down role, which I look at to find out what the NFL might be expecting him to do, not what his capabilities necessarily are. Overall, the conference is fairly well drafted compared to others, so we can have some hope for where he's going to be drafted, frankly. But what's that note there? His yards per touch is actually fairly low. His yards per team pass attempt is actually fairly low. He looks okay, but he doesn't compare the best to previous hits, as it were. In fact, I've now got I didn't even think of that, but I've now got a 3-tier column for that. Yeah, he's like he's like at the average of the average stats for players that go on to have decent NFL production. He was good in his team, good for his conference, as most of these guys turning up are, because they're the running back ones in that situation for the most of the time early on. In the pre-draft model here. So he's of interest, but I didn't see anything that particularly made me think, hey, that guy could be overly interesting. But yeah, that's a quick take on Jamal Jefferson. He looks fairly interesting, but I don't know, man, nothing really stands out. Now, some things do stand out about Kalen Hill, but unlike Jefferson, he's coming out after playing 4 years in college, which, again, I don't think makes him worse, but means that you typically less draft capital. Doesn't look like the prototypical fantasy star when you come out after 4 years, and that doesn't say anything about his overall ability. Frankly, he's coming out a little bit undersized compared to ideal, but he is within the range of, especially a modern-day NFL running back. He's like 6 inches tall, 214 pounds, a BMI of around 30. Yeah, I know I mentioned BMI, but get off my back. It's running back. He was actually showing some more significant signs of being involved in the receiving game in 2020, that year he went back for, but he only played 3 games in 2020. Don't entirely know what happened there yet, but 23 receptions through a very small 2020 season seems to suggest he was getting a larger receiving role than he'd had on the team before, so it's more of what we might have seen if it had continued, which is happening a lot in this class. And at running back, I'm a little more interested in it, just because at least the NFL might notice that and then might expect him to be able to pick it up. It's a little hard to read since we don't have another year in 2020 class, in any class to like it because of the global pandemic and so on and so forth. But, I mean, his receiving role was decent, but kind of concerning, but taking sub-signal from that last year, it's pretty interesting. Now, the other interesting about Kalen Hill, and he is a name that's picked up steam recently in the potential sleeper category of dynasty ranks and stuff. He started to state his college career sharing touches with a guy called Aries Williams, is I guess how you say that name, which again is not untypical. You don't become the running back one necessarily all the time, and you can still be good running back. Think of Miles Sanders behind Saquon Barkley, but Aries Williams really isn't that guy. But the thing I want to mention is that he was playing in the SEC West for Mississippi State, I think it is, and that team is particularly, even in the SEC West, it's actually below average for running backs, below average running back production compared to the conference, and so he's not coming from a great place. So the fact he shows up above average for the conference on Mississippi State is potentially a positive sign. And unlike other running backs on that school, like he started the career there sharing carries, which is pretty typical. They have a more even distribution than most teams. He ended up with like a 77% share of the running back opportunities on that team, which is fairly atypical for players in Mississippi State. So I actually think that's all positive in his direction, that he was able to develop a slightly larger role than you'd expect and do at least conference efficiency on a team that's typically below average for a good conference. I think that's all positive for Kalen Hill. The reason I have him below Jefferson, but in the same tier, is primarily that he's coming out of 4 years, and that's a bit of a question about what the NFL is going to make of him, especially since last year was such a shortened sample, and the NFL likes to go look at what most recently happened. And he's a little undersized, and we know the NFL has the big T pants on when they look at running backs, and they look at 220 guys if they can help it, and he doesn't really fit that mold, but 214 is fine, especially at 6 foot tall. Trey Sermons, similar problems. I looked at him a while ago, so the notes aren't as fresh, and they're worse in terms of spelling mistakes, apparently. Gotta correct all of this. I don't even know what I was trying to say here. Depending on how you want to slice it. That's it. That's what it says. You can describe him as a dominant running back for two different teams, depending on how you want to look at it. Sorry, I'm live correcting myself. Wow, I've got equal signs and also I was typing up a storm here, wasn't I? And two different teams hampered by injury, who performed well on the volume he was able to sustain. His usage did rise when he finally moved team, presumably to get more opportunity from Oklahoma to Ohio State. His last and listed team, because I can only list one name, so he's listed as Oklahoma, but you should know he played for two different teams. You could also say, though, he was an underperforming running back compared to more dominant veterans on the team. He didn't really take over straight away, as the stats read, at least. He took over the role eventually because of injury, and I say cooked, but there you go. Cooked Kenny Brooks eventually. Inefficiency and overall kind of productive twice. My final one of the subjects is, I think in this class it's pretty good for the overall profiles we've got. He was a lead running back for both backfields that he started on, and there was a change in team there, which seems to indicate the team was eager to get him the ball after he moved over, which I think is an overall positive evaluation. 80% of his yards came from the rushing game as well, though, so again, he didn't really display a very strong receiving skill set, but it is there. Hopefully, let's see what happens in the draft. Elijah Mitchell is the last one in this tier. 6.5 yards per touch is actually pretty interesting. It's on the average for running backs who have top 12 seasons. Yeah, this is another guy who's kind of okay-ish. 1.5 receptions a game is okay. It's certainly better than his overall stats look in terms of the receiving game. He doesn't cross the Zach Reed rule of having 20 receptions or more, for example. But he's also he's another one of these guys coming from a team that typically has below average running back stats, and his kind of came up towards the average, which is kind of a positive in his favor. Isn't he, as if I'm asking you, the guy who's kind of undersized, though, in this tier? Yeah, I think that was a note on him where there's some efficient... No, he's 30 BMI, 201 pounds, 70 inches tall. It seems to be a theme with this particular tier, to be fair. Yeah, same description, slightly below average compared to actual hits, but he was doing well compared to his team situation and within that conference as well. So, again, Mitchell's interesting, and he fits the rough profile of a modern running back, so let's see what happens. Doesn't quite have enough receiving work, but again, that probably doesn't tell the full story because of what happened in 2020. And the next tier is players that I've got a little bit more red flags on, but some of them might actually be more likely to sustain some level of role in the NFL, actually. Spencer Brown and Jarrett Patterson, for example, both were phenomenal runners, like literal rushing backs, like the kind of players where if you ask him to get 4 receiving yards, they're going to give you 1 rushing yard. You know, they're going to get that rushing yard no matter what you ask. But they were really good at it, playing at slightly lower conferences, so it's hard to know if they can maintain that. But they're also kind of built to sustain that level of workload in the rushing game. And I think in this class, where there's a lack of 220-pound guys, they might be interested to some teams. Now, Spencer Brown, his combine weight, or his pro day weight, is actually listed at like 203. But I've also seen him listed as like 220, and based on the conversations I've had, I think he was playing at a larger weight and cut some of that weight for his pro day, perhaps. But I think he could more likely fit that prototypical size rushing running back. And the NFL is always kind of thirsty for that kind of thing. And Spencer Brown was very good at that at a lower conference, so there it is. Jarrett Patterson, kind of the same thing. In fact, different... exactly the same thing, but from a different conference. I've heard Jarrett Patterson mentioned more as this sleeper running back, and so I think Spencer Ware kind of fits that mold too, so I have him slightly higher. Ramondale Stevenson is between the two because he's more interesting in some ways. I think the NFL might like him more. He went to, what school was it? Was it Oklahoma? Which isn't exactly a powerhouse for producing great running backs, but it's definitely a team the NFL looks at more closely, and a conference that they spend more draft capital on more freely as well. His 2.63 weighted yards per team pass attempt was actually very good when you compare it to average hits as well. Now, the problem with Ramondale Stevenson is he was kind of playing behind other running backs, not particularly noted running backs either. It wasn't like he was playing behind Saquon Barkley like Miles Sanders was, but he did play second field to, I think it was Kenny Brooks, or one of those players in this class, and only really got his chance to lead the backfield this last year. So he's got 2 years on record, one with 13 games where he was playing as a running back 2 on that team, and then one where he only has 6 games but he was running back 1 and hit an interesting weighted yards per team pass attempt. Now, we're talking about a running back who didn't get over 700 rushing yards, so how excited can I be? Well, it's mostly because he fits a prototypical size profile the NFL is going to look at, and because we have this shortened sample, we really don't know if he could have a larger role, but he's built more like that, and in this smaller window of production, he was actually fairly efficient on a more highly drafted team and more sought-after conference, and so I think in this particular class, NFL teams could take a shot on someone like Ramondale Stevenson and us be surprised when he gets to the NFL by what he can do, because we got to see relatively little of him because of the way his college career worked out. And so he's actually someone I have a lot of interest in. And if we read into it a little bit, there's more suggestion that Stevenson has a receiving role in college than there is Brown or Patterson. And I kind of target receiving as much as I can at running back, so that's fine. That's where I go with that. But yeah, he's so far, right now he's listed as 231 pounds and 6 foot tall. That's a thick man, and, you know, high-T NFL teams might like that, especially coming from Oklahoma, even with, you know, less than 700 receiving yards both of his years. Chris Evans is someone I've had mentioned to me, and I get it. I think he's more of an athletic star than a lot of people on here. I've got some note about only being able to find information about Captain America when I look for him, but I actually did find some of the stuff, you know, Chris Evans, that's also an actor. I was somewhat less impressed with him when I actually looked at his overall stats. To be honest with you, let me just take a look. Yeah, he's kind of at team average and at conference average, and I think this is the guy who played as a running back 2 several times and never really became the running back 1. But we're also talking about only playing 6 games in 2020, so what might have been, I guess. 30% of the team's rushing yards is actually his height of the role of the position, which isn't great. But he is athletic, and, you know, some people like the way he's looking on tape, and in this class, that gets him into this 4th tier here. I'm sorry, someone asked me literally about him, and I was expecting to get excited, but he really just didn't have the role, and what we're looking for a running back is someone who earns the role and then is decently efficient in yards per team pass attempt or weighted yards per team pass attempt to include that rushing or that receiving variance. And he just didn't get there, so the stats don't overly like him, but I do like his build. I do like some of the signal from his college stats. I'm just not overly enamored. Javen Hawkins, kind of the same thing as Chris Evans, but he is slightly undersized. Like the high T NFL isn't going to overall like him, and he didn't have enough receiving work to say that he's a smaller guy who's dynamic, so he's going to get a lot of receiving work. Now, he did get like 4 receptions in his second season, which is nowhere near enough, but he got like 58 yards on those receptions, which is, I guess the throwaway term is playmaker, but he had some good receptions that one year. And again, but in 2020, he was already up to 16 receptions that final year. It's like that final year, the running backs who came back just for a few games ended up getting a lot more receiving work than they were typically doing before that. So again, reading into that a little bit, NFL teams, he definitely probably has the skill set. Whether the teams will identify him that way, considering it's a fairly tricky profile to read. He played 13 games and 8 games in his final year and is a little undersized. I don't know, but again, if he ended up in the right spot, I think there's enough weighted yards per team pass attempt signal there to be interested in him. So, yeah. Demeric Felton, I don't know what he is, but he's not a running back, and he's not a slot receiver, and he's kind of not a hybrid of both. I guess with the NFL the way it is right now, I guess someone might want to take a shot, but I don't know. He doesn't look like Curtis Samuel. He doesn't look like Antonio Gibson, but he was playing a dynamic or versatile role for a team and doing fairly well at it, but it's hard to find comparisons because you can't compare his stats to wide receiver. You can't really compare him to running backs. 58% of the team's rushing opportunity, or the running back opportunities, averaging 9 yards, or 9% of the team's receptions, though. He's actually getting 19% of the team's receiving yards in 1 year. So he's a little hard to know how to compare his comps. He's interesting, and he just kind of rounds out my running back ranks right now. Because of it, just because he's kind of an interesting profile, and after so many guys that kind of choose your own adventure, there are some positive signs, but they're slightly undersized or they're slightly oversized with the lack of receiving work. And I really like my Patreon's phrase there. That was a really good way of putting it. And we're kind of going to have to wait to see what adventure NFL teams are looking to go on with these guys that are probably going to spend second, third day draft capital on. And yeah, I think the ones that stand out to me the most, I mean, Jamal Jefferson, I have to look at him a little bit more because it would be great if he had a better profile, but as it is, it's kind of average. But he's the right age, coming from a good conference. Yeah, the right size. But yeah, he's not really the guy that stands out to me. I really like the way Kalen Hill, and I have less excuses to make. And the fact that he only played a few games after going back to 4 years is the main red darkish orange flag maybe on his profile. And that's less concerning than most. Trey Sermon, having switched teams, I don't mind that. But also, he had to switch teams to earn the role, and then was barely above, average, based on team conference and compared to hits. Like, it's okay. So he doesn't really stand out to me as much as someone like Kalen Hill does. Elijah Mitchell, I don't know. At some point, you just get slightly bored of making excuses. I do like that 6.5 yards per touch, just as an overview of what he did throughout his college season. But that's kind of the problem with these guys. They played, like, they weren't as good as we really would like, or they played a little too long, or the career trajectory was a little weird. And that's all fine, but we kind of need the confidence of draft capital to really help sort out what to think of that. And none of them have a particularly dominant receiving role, which you don't need, but it's nice to find the Austin Eckler of the world who looks like he's going to be so good in the receiving game, there's a decent floor there, and I don't know I see that with any of these guys. In fact, what I see is a floor of rushing potential. Like, if you want rushing potential, you kind of have to go with lower conference players here, because these are the guys that are built for it, that the NFLs might be attracted to. Again, they're high T eyes, and they were exceptionally good at rushing the ball. They just have with Ramondre Stevenson a lack of opportunity to hold the lead back for more than 6 games because of COVID and the global pandemic, and Spencer Brown and Jarrett Patterson did that but displayed no receiving element to the game. I'm sure they may have it, but they weren't doing it on tape, so the NFL aren't going to draft them for that. But they're kind of built for it at a lower conference. We're doing well at it. And so I keep finding this rushing floor, which is not normally what I'm looking for. You're looking for a receiving floor, because that provides easy PPR points. But instead, I'm starting to think if NFL teams want a running back, like lower conference guys that are built for it, that were good in their situation at least, might be the way they turn. And so again, we need draft capital. They are slightly below because I'm really targeting receiving work. And of these 3, I like all 3 a lot for that reason, that kind of dark horse candidate to end up in an interesting situation. Stevenson, the one with the worst profile, the most limited profile, probably has the more potential upside because I really don't know what he could have done. But that also makes you ask, why couldn't he have played? Why couldn't he have done that first year? And why did he get cooked that first year? And also, he's playing at an older age. So, I don't know. They end up in the same tier for me. But Stevenson might be the bigger mystery of the 3 for NFL teams. And coming from that heavy draft capital conference is interesting. I'd love to tell you Chris Evans sticks out, but he doesn't. Same with Javen Hawkins and Demeric Felton. I just don't know. So honestly, it's Spencer Brown, Rondell Stevenson, and Jarrett Patterson, normally not the running backs I'm looking for that are standing out. And then with these guys, I'm like, Kalen Hill maybe? Kalen Hill's interesting, honestly. So yeah. Am I done? Yeah, I think that's all the running backs I've ranked so far. I've ranked a lot less than I have with wide receivers, but again, that's just leaning a little bit on the draft means more, and so we'll get more names when they have some draft capital spent on them that I haven't looked at them too much. I'm going to keep digging into these profiles. Like, I want to know more of the reasons why some of these players missed seasons. Maybe there were more injuries than I'm aware of, that kind of thing. But, yeah, I think that's it. That's the last of my running backs for now. And it's, we're on to tight end. And as you can see, I have them, but I figured I'd separate them out into a separate video. So, yeah. All right. Big screen, just for a second though. Hey, how you doing? Anyway, so that rounds out my running back profiles. I'm sorry this last section is really not as broken down in individual breakdowns, but again, I've written them on my notes. My database is all there for you to dig through, and you can quiz me anytime about a particular player. So I just thought I'd do a quick roundup, and so I can move on and start making more videos more readily, because these take, I'm not going to, grinding really hard, but I mean, they take a little background work, and every time I look at one, I'm like, I got to correct this in the database, and I've had to add players, because I wanted to do previews of different tight ends and running backs I didn't have, and it's actually quite a long, drawn-out process, and so that's not leading to ready, quick-paced content, which I know you love, I guess. I don't know. But, I figure this will move us on a little bit better. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any particular play you want me to dig into in more depth before the draft, because we're going to dig into them all over again after the draft, which is really when it matters, but, we got to do something till it gets here. Thanks very much. Happy Scott Fishbowl Invite Day, I guess. I hope you got an invite. I hope you're getting one soon, if not already. And if you haven't signed up, scottfishbowl.com, sign up. It's a really fun league. And, I'm out. Okay, that's it. Thanks very much. Talk to you again next time.